You wake up, you check the news, and there it is again. Another executive order signed by Donald Trump. Not a bill passed through Congress, not something debated on the House floor, not something negotiated, rewritten, or voted on by the people who elected him as president. You just sign it. One signature, a policy that changes for the entire country.
That allow ineligible people to vote in various federal and state elections all over the country. Then secondarily, you've consistently identified that vote by mail in this country has become rife with fraud. People returning ballots who aren't eligible to return ballots being sent to people who aren't confirmed to be eligible voters. So what this executive order is going to do is, one, we're going to take federal data. We're going to ensure that each state's election officials are provided with a comprehensive view of who the eligible voters in their jurisdiction actually are, allowing them to properly verify that everybody voting in their elections is legally able to vote. And then it orders the Postmaster General, the U.S. Postal Service, to take bold new measures to verify that ballots both being sent to people are being sent to people who are eligible to vote, and then the ballots being returned or being properly returned by eligible voters only. And we believe that combined, the measures in this executive order will help secure elections in the future and ensure that the many abuses of our election system in the past aren't repeated in future elections.
Right. Howard?
So the fundamentals of our democracy are built on voter integrity, right? We all need it. You've said it time and time again. It's a total agreement amongst everybody. So here's the idea. The states, right, run these elections. They will, if they want to use the U.S. mail, the U.S. Postal Service, they're going to get a code, a barcode from the U.S. Postal Service, and they're going to put that on the envelope, and we will have one envelope per vote. None of this time where we have no idea, there's no observers to mail, there's no envelopes, there's no certainty. That's all going to go away, and what the president is doing today is he's going to make sure that mail-in ballots are safe, secure, and accurate, and will have a clear distinction. If you voted by mail, you will have it on the envelope. Obviously not on the ballot, but on the envelope. So we will know 1 million mail-in ballots. There'll be 1 million envelopes, and you'll be able to know exactly, correctly, that citizens voted.
So now you really want to sit with that for a minute, because we've gotten so used to hearing executive order that it almost sounds normal. Routine, because who rules by executive order? Only somebody who knows what they're putting in an executive order other people or the country won't like. Okay, we done got so used to hearing executive order like it's just another part of the government doing its job, but it's not supposed to be routine. It's not supposed to feel routine. It's supposed to feel serious. Executive orders were meant to manage how laws are carried out, not to replace the laws. That's Congress's job. That's the House. That's the Senate. That's where ideas are supposed to be tested, challenged, debated, and most certainly voted upon. So when a president starts leaning heavily on executive orders like this president, you got to ask the obvious question. Why is he avoiding Congress? Why is he trying to skip the debate? I understand the SAVE Act is not going to pass, but the SAVE Act has bipartisan support if it does pass. That means the American public wants the SAVE Act to go through. The American public does not want the SAVE Act to go through. The American public does not want the president to put out executive orders trying to rule over Congress and rule over something that belongs to the states to do. Okay, so he wants to skip the debate. My question is, why not put the policy in front of the American people, the representatives, and let them decide? That's what the SAVE Act is supposed to do. And the answer is uncomfortable, but it's straight up facts. Because Congress has said no. Congress has said no. The SAVE Act is exactly what he's trying to do, but Congress has said no. Okay? Because Congress he don't want to put it in front of Congress because Congress is going to say no, and they might force some changes. And when you don't want the friction, you don't want the headache of dealing with Congress, you try to put things in place to go around them. And this is what this executive order is doing. And that's why it's starting to look like you're not governing through the system, but you're trying to govern around the system. You're not trying to use the system. You're trying to do what you want to do. Now let's talk about what actually it does in real life, because this is not some abstract constitutional argument, okay? This affects how stable the country feels day to day. I don't know about anybody else, but this makes me feel very unstable every time this person pulls out a pen and starts signing on executive orders. So when policy is made through Congress, it's slower, but it's durable. It's been argued over and over again. It's been negotiated. It has buy-in from both sides. That means it tends to last. But when policy comes from executive orders, that's fast, it's frail. But the next president can come in and erase it just as quickly as it was created. So now we're stuck in this cycle. The next president reverses it, then it gets challenged in court, then a judge blocks it, then it gets appealed, and so on and so on and so on. This executive order today has states waiting on it to challenge it, to have a lawsuit against it. I'm sure California is just waiting, chomping at the bit to see what this executive order entails and for them to challenge it in court. It's going to court. It is not going to be put into place in time to stop voting. If it's challenged correctly and if it gets all the way up to the Supreme Court, okay, this is not a stable way to govern. This is chaos using paper. And the people who feel the chaos the most is us, the workers, the voters, small business, people trying to figure out what the rules are from year to year. Somebody said the other day they miss Obama. It wasn't no drama like this. You ain't lying. We can't never get no stability from this administration. And this is where it gets more serious, because every time a president stretches executive power just a little bit further, they're not just making decisions for that day. They're trying to set precedent for tomorrow. And this is the part we don't like. If you're okay with this level of power when somebody you support is in office, then you're automatically giving that same power to somebody you don't support later. No exceptions, no takebacks. Okay? None. Now, in this order is dealing with voting systems, mail processes, federal verification requirements. You're not just changing the rules with this executive order. You're adding workload at scale, and that workload has to land somewhere. So now you got employees trying to interpret new guidance in real time, systems that may not be built to handle this change, and deadlines that don't adjust just because the policy is new. That leads directly to the second implication. There's going to be errors, delays, breakdowns. Because when you overload the system, the mail system, it don't operate better. It starts to crack. They already running out of money. They already short on people. They already shorting on services. They got to shorten the services because they're running out of money. Applications going to get delayed. Processes getting inefficient. Different states will interpret the rules differently. And now you don't have one unified system anymore. You got a patchwork. Some states comply fully, some push back, some modify their implementation. So depending on where you live, you may be operating under a completely different reality than somebody who lives in, say, California. Okay. Plus, there's a legal conflict, because with something like this, there always is. The second an executive order pushes into contested territory, states' business, states are going to challenge that. Organizations are going to challenge it. And now you're in court immediately. He signed an executive order today. They probably going to be in court by the end of this week, if that. I don't know how quick courts work. So what does that do? It freezes part of the policy. It creates confusion about what is enforceable and what's not. And it drags the issue into a long, drawn-out legal fight, which this is going to be. So now, instead of having clarity, you got uncertainty. And here's the real impact on the uncertainty. People don't know what the rules are. Businesses don't know what standards apply. States don't know what they're required to enforce. Okay? This kind of order shifts the policy away from the states and towards the federal government. This is wild. Currently, states run elections, not the federal government. There are over 8,000 local election jurisdictions across the country. Counties, townships, municipality, all running their own system, their own equipment, their own processes. So when the federal government steps in through an order signed by Donald Trump and says this is how it's going to be done now, that doesn't land like it's supposed to. It collides with thousands of systems that already exist. And we've seen exactly what happens when that collision happens. States sue. In past election-related disputes, you've had multiple states filing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit within days, arguing federal overreach into state-controlled election. You get immediate injunction requests, meaning judges are asked to block the policy before it even fully starts. Now you don't have one system, you have a split system. Some states follow, some pause, because of the court hearings, and some refuse entirely. And that creates confusion that's measurable, not theoretically. After major election rule changes in recent years, studies show millions of ballots were rejected or delayed, often due to mismatched requirements like signatures or ID verification changes. In the 2020 election alone, hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots were rejected nationwide, many for technical issues like signatures mismatches or missed information. Now layer in addition these requirements from this federal order. More verification, more matching, more processing stuff, and you increase the chances of rejection. That's not opinion, that's math. That's deliberate. Every additional step is another point of failure. This is deliberately trying to stop mail-in ballots. Now, access. According to the Brennan Center of Justice, millions of Americans do not have easy access to require identification or documentation used in a stricter verification system. We're talking about elderly people, low-income voters, rural residents, people without reliable transportation. So when you add stricter verification or processing requirements, you are statistically increasing the number of people who will have difficulty completing that process. And we've already seen the effect. In states that implemented stricter voting procedures, turnout gaps increased between higher income and lower income populations. That's not abstract, that's documented. This is deliberate. Now let's talk about timing, because federal guidance, even outside of executive orders, has historically warned against changing election rules too close to the election. Why? Because of something called the Purcell principle, a standard the courts use that basically says don't change election rules right before people vote because it creates confusion and undermines confidence. So if an executive order introduces changes close to the election cycle, you're not just making a policy decision, you're increasing the likelihood of court intervention and disenfranchisement. And once courts step in, you get delays, partial enforcement, conflicting rulings across states. That's how you end up with voters in one state operating under one set of rules and voters in another operating on a completely different set. Now, zoom out, because this is where the long-term implications become undeniable. Every time executive power is used to reshape systems like this, the response is predictable. Lawsuits, court rulings, reversals. We've already seen the executive orders overturned or paused repeatedly in federal courts over the last decades by both Republican and Democratic administrators. Even Trump, he tried to do this before. They turned him down. They knocked him down. He's going to try it again. They're probably going to knock him down again. So what does this mean? It means the policy is unstable from the get-go. That's why they want Congress to act, not executive orders to change laws. It may go into effect quickly, but it's also likely to be challenged quickly. Like I said, he did it today. Today is Tuesday. They might be in court by Friday. We don't know. It's going to be challenged quickly, very quickly, and possibly reverse just as fast as he's putting it in motion. So now the system is not just changing, it's swinging. And that has measurable consequences. Election officials have reportedly needed to retrain staff, reprint materials, update systems multiple times within a single cycle due to legal changes. That costs money. That creates delays. That increases the chance of error. So when you hear about this executive order, don't just think about the intention. Look at the track record. Look at the data. Look at what actually happens when these things hit real systems. Thousands of jurisdictions trying to adjust all at once. Millions of voters navigating new requirements. Courts stepping in mid-process. Ballots delayed, rejected, challenged. That's the reality, not theory, opinion, or politics. It's just an impact. And I see you guys in the next one.